honored and excited to host or co-host this event, and really honored to welcome Karri and Taylor and the folks from LACI, and as well as Tracy Chung today to talk about sustainable fashion. So I just wanted to do I'm just going to do a quick read some of the bios that we have here, and then I'm going to turn it over to Maite, who's going to talk about LACI. LACI, of course, everyone here pretty much knows LACI is this amazing organization, the LA Cleantech Incubator, and they are generously supporting our new program that maybe Tracy will get to talk about later, that she's kickstarting and initiating, a sustainable fashion ambassador academy, we're calling it right now. We might change the title there a little bit, but so we want to get our students at CSUN, many of them who are fashion design majors. There's a lot of interest, of course, as we all know, in this field, and we want to capture some of that energy and teach some of this to our students, and also involve and invite folks that LACI works with, like Karri and Taylor and other sustainable fashion folks, to come in and share their knowledge and just kind of inspire our students. And hopefully there's some cross-pollination around that as well. So this event is again, because of LACI's support, we have a long-standing relationship, and again, this funding is going towards for this project's going towards that. And we wanted to kick off as kind of a preview to have us all come here together and talk about sustainable fashion. So I'll get out of the way in a second. Let me just read the bios. So our first, we have Dr. Tracy Chung, who received her PhD in Design and Human Environment at the College of Business from Oregon State University. Her expertise includes consumer behavior, merchandising management, and e-commerce. Her research focuses on consumer decision-making, retail technology adoption, consumer attitude and product attributes, marketing strategies, and sustainable consumption. And I just want to mention, Tracy's also working with one of our students at the Institute, Aline de Gracias. She should be coming in. Oh, she's not here yet, but she should be coming in on one of the project around sustainability metrics and branding in the fashion industry. It's a really great project. Maite Sanchez is the Director of Energy at the at LACI, where she oversees energy programs and partnerships to accelerate the commercialization and adoption of clean energy technologies. Prior to LACI, Maite worked as Senior State Affairs Liaison at the California Independent System Operator, advancing initiatives that supported California's clean electric grid transition. Maite began her work in energy staffing, staffing the Utility and Energy Committee. By the way, I'm so sorry. I know I'm botching all of these bios, so correct me after. Energy staffing, the Utility Energy Commission in the California State Assembly, where she also led a coalition that passed the solar and multi-family affordable housing program. Karri Ann, is it Frerichs? Did I say your last name wrong, Karri? Yeah, I did. Oh, that's right. Okay, good. Karri's been a fashion... Frerichs. Oh, sorry about that. Has been a fashion industry entrepreneur, innovator, and professor since 2005, with experience in retail management, wholesale distribution, apparel manufacturing, and product development. Under Karri's direction, Circular Fashion LA is rethinking how fashion and other textile products can be produced to eliminate harmful environmental and social economic impacts of the industry in which she has spent her entrepreneurial career. Circular Fashion LA tackles the problem of post-consumer clothing and textile waste by redesigning existing clothes into custom, high-value styles that are fitted to each customer. Karri has been a college professor since 2010, educating students studying fashion design at City College in San Francisco, as well as the Academy of Art in San Francisco, and now at Woodbury University in Burbank. She teaches the business of fashion and fashion production, and is currently writing a curriculum for Woodbury University to offer its first courses in circular fashion business models. So we're really excited about that, and hopefully we get to collaborate around that as well. And finally, Taylor Hazley Cook is the co-founder and CEO of the Hurd company. Or is it Hurd Co. or her company?
Either one, no worries.
Okay, thanks. And Hurd Co. makes it possible to make clothes from plant material that's normally thrown away after food crops are harvested. Today, fabrics like viscose, hopefully I said that right, rayon, and lyocell are made from trees. The company's zero waste process uses half the water and 350 times less energy than conventional methods. Taylor and her co-founder started the company based on their graduate thesis at the Bren School of Environmental Science and Management at UC Santa Barbara. The Hurd Co. is a proud alum of Skydeck Accelerator and is currently part of Fashion for Good's acceleration program. Wow. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. And look forward to hearing more about all of your biographies. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Maite. Did you need a screen share or something?
Yeah, I had a larger presentation, but I feel like we'll probably get more if I just do like a quick overview, and then we can actually hear from Karri and Taylor, which is the most interesting part of this. But I did want to give you all a bit of background on who LACI is, to give you a little bit more context about what the event that we're doing today, but then also in case you're interested in getting involved with LACI and figuring out what that could look like for you all. So happy to answer any questions if any of you want to meet after, or connect you to the appropriate people at LACI to figure out where you could fit within the organization. So let me go ahead and just bring up a slide to give us a little bit more direction. So at LACI, our mission is to create, let's see if it actually works. There it is. So our mission is to create an inclusive green economy. And we believe that in order to do this, there's 3 ways that we've gone about it. So one is unlocking innovation. And what that means is that that's our team that really works directly with startups like Hurd Co. to support their development as they're building out their products, as they're making their connections with customers or with investors, et cetera. And we support different types of startups from the earliest stage to mid stage. So those that have, for instance, their technology is already developed and we're working with them to deploy them in technologies. And then we have our market transformation team, which is a team that I'm a part of. And there we actually have different focuses that are also mirrored in our startups. So that means that we concentrate on 3 areas at LACI. So that's zero emission mobility, clean energy, which I oversee, and sustainable cities, which is where Karri and Taylor fall under. At Sustainable Cities, we really look at the circular economy of different products. So that is frequently in the fashion world. So you'll see we often do have startups that are doing more sustainable practices around clothing or the production of different dyes, et cetera, things of that nature. And what we do in market transformation is that we really work to convene the public sector and the private sector, because we believe in order to accelerate clean tech adoption, we have to have all forces at the table to figure out what are our gaps, where are our barriers, what can we do in terms of if it's at the local level around permitting, for instance, identifying locations that are key. What can we do at that level, or what can we incentivize or work to incentivize at the federal level? What kind of incentives do we want to see so that companies are adopting quicker options around sustainable practices rather than just, for instance, waiting for the industry to evolve? So through that, we're able to push forward initiatives that range from anywhere from the local end, like I mentioned, to the state, to the federal side. And then our last team is the enhancing community team. So there we work on workforce development issues, programs, as well as making sure that in every step of our work, we're incorporating the community around us and also identifying the underserved communities so that we ensure that they are a priority in terms of when we are making the clean energy transition, for instance, or the sustainable city transition, et cetera. and that they're at the table along with all of us. So that translates differently. So for instance, on the market transformation team, we also do pilots specifically right now on transportation or energy, but that's a team that's growing. But through that, we make sure that whenever we are deploying pilots, that we have a focus on disadvantaged communities, which is what the state has categorized certain areas that have, harder implications or different implications with air emissions, air pollutions, or lower income, et cetera. And we make sure to identify the communities to ensure that we're also deploying and prioritizing some of the tech that is being sent out there. And then we also have an advanced prototyping center fellowship, which allows so I think you have to have a minimum of a high school degree. And then we also target underserved and underemployed communities. And we essentially, it's like an opportunity for some folks to have an opportunity to engage in the green economy for the first time. Others, they already have a background, but they want to use it as a way to network with the broader LACI community. So definitely would recommend if anyone has interest in just like getting some general awareness and also having the opportunity to work on some skill developments, which I'm a big fan of, to look into it. Our current program so it changes every year that we have it, but our current program is around software development for electric mobility. So that's just something that continues to evolve in terms of topics, but at the very least, it gives you that opportunity to interface with LACI in a more formal way. And it's a 12-week program. And that is more or less it. I'm happy to answer any questions. What I'll also do is send over the actual broader presentation to you, Nat, so that you could share it with the folks who attended today.
That'd be great. Thank you. By the way, we're recording. I hope that's okay. We didn't say that at the beginning. You're supposed to say that in the beginning, but we're recording this event because we know we're going to get hits and folks are going to want to see this in our sustainability circle. So apologies for not saying that at the beginning.
No worries.
Yeah. So yeah, we could turn it over to you and Tracy and let you. I know we sent Karri and Taylor a bunch of questions, but I mean, you could start with those or wherever you want to take it.
Yeah, and Tracy, I'll let you lead the discussion.
Okay, well, thank you everyone for being here today. It's really our pleasure to have this opportunity to have this conversation with you here. And this is a very interesting collaborations with for us with LACI and Karri and Taylor. So we would like to let's do this. Karri and Taylor, would you like to introduce yourself and to introduce your company to our audience first? Taylor, would you like to go first?
Yeah, I'll go first. So hi, everyone. I'm Taylor. As Nat mentioned, I'm co-founder and CEO of the Hurd Co., where we make it possible to make clothes from agricultural waste. So I think he sort of summed it up, but we do make, a lot of fabrics today are made from trees. Fabrics like viscose, rayon, and lyocell are made from trees. So over 150 million trees are cut down every year and turned into clothing. We make it possible to use leftover plant matter instead. So we use agricultural waste, collect that, and then transform it into a feedstock pulp, which is actually what we are. We are a pulping company, and that pulp is what brands use to make those types of fabric. So that's a little about what we do at the Hurd Co.
Thank you, Taylor. Hi, Karri.
Yeah, that is super cool. So many people don't realize that those fabrics come from trees, and fashion is a big contributor to deforestation. So I just want to say thank you for doing that. That's a truly amazing circular material that you're developing. I have a little bit to do with some trees too, as one of my best-selling products. And the first product I launched is just a very simple cloth dinner napkin. Such a simple little thing. If you switch to that instead of using paper towels or paper napkins at your dinner table, it will help save the 110 million trees that are cut down for paper towel production in the US alone, and it saves on your household budget, and it reduces household waste. So that's just my little tie-in with the trees there too. So thank you for doing that. And then I'll just add that I just completed LACI's Founders Business Accelerator, which I found insanely valuable, and I look forward to, I'll be applying to your innovators program next, and then maybe in a year or so when I'm ready to apply to the incubation program. But your support network has been amazing and has really been a true asset to my business to help get me to a place of scalability and such too. So, so thank you. I'm happy to be here.
I'll just
Well, thank
add,
you.
Karri, so I guess together we'll save 260 million trees, which is pretty good. That's a pretty good amount of trees between for two ladies. Yeah, that's pretty good. And I just wanted to add that we, at the Hurd Co, we just finished we're in the 5th cohort of the Innovators program at LACI. So that's how we're affiliated with LACI, and it has been an amazing experience thus far. So we're thrilled to be associated with LACI.
Well, thank you very much. It's wonderful to know so many people like to it's wonderful to know like you have this wonderful project, and we all are passionate about the sustainable fashion event. So my next question for you too is, can you tell us about your journey that led you to your business or the career path?
Sure, I'll go first this time. You can take the second one. So as mentioned, I've been in the industry since 2005 in almost every sector: retail, wholesale, product development, etc. And in 2017, I actually left the industry quite disgruntled from the consumerism, from the race to the bottom in pricing, from the pollution. I went and worked for a sports marketing company. But it was in reading the LA mayor's, it was then the sustainability plan, now it's the Green New Deal. And I read the Green New Deal, and all 150 pages of that, like I saw 2 bullet points that referred to apparel and like apparel manufacturing, and then diverting clothing from landfill out of all 150 pages. And so I was still running a sports marketing company, but I just kind of went down the rabbit hole with the city to figure out who was in charge of those 2 bullet points. And that was a difficult journey just to figure out who was in charge. And a lot of the people in the city were kind of going back and forth of who was in charge. But I finally got connected with like the Mayor's Office of Sustainability and some city council members who were on the committee, and was just like, realizing just how much, of a need there is. Like LA has the number, it goes back and forth between LA and New York, but we're the #1 manufacturing center in the United States for clothing. And, for that needs to be a focus. Like this industry employs like 60,000 people in Los Angeles County alone, approximately. And so I founded Circular Fashion LA in summer of 2019 as kind of more of a consultancy advocacy thing. And but then I started getting into my own products, and sustainability and zero waste was my whole reason for launching Circular Fashion. Whereas when I entered the industry, it was the fashion, which was the reason I was in it, the trends, the fashion, the look. But coming back into it, I came back into it purely from an environmentalist perspective, thinking like, what can I do to help this problem? And all my skills are in the industry. And so it was just like, to me, a no-brainer to just kind of start figuring out a different method for manufacturing products. So yeah, and then LACI was super valuable for me because I had this business idea that was very abstract at the time, like help, because I wanted to live in the sector of, because we're all told as consumers to reduce our consumerism, to buy less, to repair and repurpose, and keep wearing our clothes. And I was like, no one's helping people do that. And so that was a sector I wanted to be in. And I had this very abstract idea, like, well, I could redesign people's clothes. And then it's like, but into what? And some we think would be cool would be someone else wouldn't think was cool, you know? And so like through the LACI program and working with the mentors really helped me get that abstract idea down into a very finite, replicable process that that is what we are launching now in our redesign service, to redesign clothing in your closet into specific new pieces that are more versatile, that you'll wear longer, that can be refitted to you, and to just really love your clothes for longer is our kind of one of our new taglines. So that's where we're at now. And yeah, I'm just so happy to continue on with LACI. And as a professor myself, speaking to students on the line, you know, you're the future. And you're going to be the future problem solvers who are going to, in addition to us smaller businesses coming up, like the new crop who are going to come up and really have sustainability at heart from the beginning, to just kind of change the structure from the inside out with this like new generation of designers coming up. So that's where we're at right now.
Karri, can you tell us a little more information about the specific steps? So you are helping consumers to redesign or rebuild their current
Reboot, that's a good way to put it. Reboot.
Yeah,
reboot,
yeah.
right? Recreate the new style of their garments, right? What is the process in terms of how consumer to contact you, your company, and what's the whole process?
Yeah, so through my website, we're just started very simply with the very first service, but it's to be the first of many. And I have a little toy I'm playing with on my finger. But in my process of upcycling garments and just figuring out like how can we add value, we came into the idea of like re-dyeing something is the easiest, low cost, most economical way to put whole new life into something, because all of us have stained clothes in our closet that we're not wearing that might otherwise be perfect, but it's got that coffee stain or the wine stain, or you know, your kids put a handful of paint on your something, yeah, and then we don't wear it, and then it's in our closet and you can't donate that, you know, so then you have to throw that away. So it's like our first process was like coming up with a re-dye, and not just a re-dye, but we were thinking like, what are some cool things we do? So we came up with like an eco bleaching process to give it like a reverse fade, we call it. Another thing is we can do take anything and kind of turn it into a cool ombre effect, like 2-color ombre effect. And then the third thing, the third one we're coming out with in like the next week and a half is some shibori prints. Which is like, it's like a Japanese tie-dye is what shibori is. So we're coming up with that process. And, but that's just where we want to start. What I'm going to get into is like then doing the actual reconstruction. So something as simple as taking like a maxi dress and changing it into a jumpsuit. Taking old button-down work shirts that you haven't worn very much, and maybe turning that into like a versatile shirt dress that you can wear. I've had a customer tell me like, I have this mink coat I inherited from my grandma that's been in my closet. I have never worn it. I will never wear it. Can you turn that into like a throw blanket for me? So I'm like, I bet there's a lot of fur coats in closets that aren't being worn, and maybe, you know, that could become like a replicable thing. So So just thinking like, what's in closets that people aren't wearing? Cocktail dresses. Well, we could separate that into separates for you. And now you have like this cool top that you can wear with jeans instead of like, I mean, I haven't worn these cocktail dresses since my 20s, but I would wear that cute top with jeans or like the skirt with a casual t-shirt. And now suddenly I'm wearing these cocktail dresses out again. So just these different, like, very defined, replicable ways that can take something that's in a lot of closets and turn it into something new. And, you know, that's where we're starting.
Wow, that's really amazing. And I think that's really a new concept of a new concept in the fashion business. And I believe it's gonna take off. I think that's
so.
that's the trend in for the future of the fashion industry. How about Taylor?
That and what Taylor's doing, yeah.
Taylor, tell us about your business or career path journey of it, and yeah, what a little bit more about your business.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first I want to say, Karri, I've been a long time fan of Circular Fashion LA, and I've been eyeing the Zero Waste Originals cactus shorts for like ever, and just need to like pull the trigger and buy them. But yeah, about my journey, I did my I guess, well, since we're talking to students, I'll go all the way back to the beginning. I did my undergrad in communications, which is sort of a fancy way to say I was a musical theater major. Actually, I went to Northwestern. I did my degree in musical theater. I ran a musical theater school for kids for 5 years out here in Los Angeles. Totally different. And then I had like a mid-20s complete career pivot. Like, this is, I'm going to do a full 180 and change what I'm doing. Started working at a marine plastics nonprofit, and came to realize that the best way to have an impact in terms of sustainability is through empowerment, that people can't make better choices unless they have access to better options. And that really starts with design. That starts with designing thoughtful products, designing products that can be repurposed, as Karri's talking about, rebuilt and reused and used for a long time. And to me, what really spoke to me was the materials, is using sustainable materials that lasted a really long time, that weren't made in a gross way, if I can be so bold. So I also, you know, have been a fabric nerd my whole life. My grandma taught me to sew when I was 6 and just became completely obsessed. So materials really spoke to me from an early age. So I decided, you know, this is where I want to spend my energy. This is what I want to focus on with my life and my time. But my degree's in musical theater, so I need to understand the science of looking at a material and understanding what that means when it is sustainable. How do you determine what it means? So I went to graduate school, went to the UCSB Bren School of Environmental Science and Management to learn about the science of sustainability, learn what it meant to have a sustainable material, to make a sustainable material, and then proposed a thesis project to look into sustainable materials. While I was in grad school, I also took on a job at a apparel brand to learn more about what brands needed. So I was in the materials and sustainability department at a brand, learning about, you know, how brands evaluate materials, what new innovative materials need to do to fit in with brand supply chains. And after I finished graduate school, my co-founder and I turned our thesis project into a company. So we launched it as a company. And that was 2 years ago. We've been full-time with the company since then. We are now working with a bunch of major brands to try to get debut collections out in the market. And hopefully those collections will be out in the next 12 months. So that's where we're working on right now. That's my whole life story. So please feel free to ask any more questions.
Wow.
Would you like to?
Oh,
Do you like? You want to say something?
Oh no! I was just laughing, but I have questions, but I don't want to. Yeah, I'll wait. I'll hold on.
Well, thank you, Taylor, for sharing your life story with us. I think I really like this group because we have a perfect panel in terms of we do cover 2 type of business model in the industry. We have a B2B Taylor's company, the perspective, like you're creating the new material and your customer is a brand, right? Or a designer who is going to create some new product to our consumers. So your business model is like B2B, and Karri, your business model is more like B2C because you are going to produce the garments for the consumers. So in that case, I want to ask you, what do you think about the market in the US or in LA or in the US for Taylor from B2B standpoint? How do you market your product, and what do you think about is the industry, the fashion industry, ready for these materials? What's the difficulty you encounter, or what's the hope you see in sustainable fashion, in the future of sustainable fashion?
Sure.
Yeah,
So,
Taylor, would you
yeah.
like to,
Oh, go.
Thank you.
Sorry, go ahead. I'm sorry, Tracy. I
Would
cut
you like
off.
to share, would you please share your thoughts with us?
Sure. Yeah. So, yep, as you mentioned, we are B2B. So it is definitely different in terms of how to market a product. So we're not marketing to consumers, although we do talk to consumers, of course. You know, we want people to know what they're wearing. However, most people don't really think twice. I mean, most people don't look at the labels of their clothes. When we reach for our favorite shirt, we don't often think about what it's made from or really think about what it took to get it into our closet. And that's totally normal. So we do, we are primarily marketing to other businesses with a sprinkle of education, consumer education in there, because I think it's important. And people, once they see it, they can't unsee it. So yeah, in terms of business in Los Angeles, or how it relates to Los Angeles, as you mentioned, I think Karri mentioned it, Los Angeles and New York are the two biggest garment manufacturing centers in the country. So LA is a very good place to be for things like that. However, textiles, so much of the apparel industry is overseas. It's just a fact. So much of it happens, clothes get made overseas. So we are obviously very deep in the supply chain. We make pulp. So it has to go through 5 steps before it can become clothing. For those interested, it goes from pulp to fiber, from fiber to yarn, from yarn to fabric, from fabric to clothes. So there's a bunch of different steps that happen in there. So yeah, I mean, it's a great place to be because we do work directly with brands, and there are a lot of brands in Los Angeles. When we are marketing, we're talking to brands because they are the ones who choose what happens in their supply chain to a certain extent. They go to their manufacturers and say, great, we would like you to source this round of fiber from the Hurd Co. We'd like you to use Hurd Co. pulp, please. And then they come to us and order the pulp from us. So that's how we get all of our orders and how we do our marketing. That said, LACI has been immensely helpful with us in terms of strategizing B2B. How do we market a B2B raw product? And it's been immensely helpful. In terms of, is the fashion industry ready for this material? Yes, I think the fashion industry is definitely ready for this material. I think that, what I've learned, what I set out to do in graduate school, why I went to graduate school, was to see if the fashion industry was ready. And my thesis actually focused most on the readiness question. I mean, we went out and we spoke to, I think, almost 100 different, no, we spoke to over 100 people in the apparel industry, fashion industry. I think it was like over 50 brands, and I can't even remember the numbers anymore, but we did so many interviews, so much industry analysis to see if the industry was ready, to see if this was a need in the industry. Not just were they ready, but did they need and want this? So, and we found that yes, the answer was a resounding yes, if we could meet certain goals for them. Like they needed a material that was easy to quantify the impact so that they could communicate that effectively to their consumers. They need a material that fits into their existing supply chain, because changing an apparel supply chain is so painful. They can't do it. They need a material that is sustainable but doesn't cost more, which is a huge ask, but it is one that we are able to deliver on, fortunately. So, there were needs, and then there were their needs, and we do manage to meet those needs. But yes, if we can meet those needs, then yes, the industry is very ready for new materials. They want to reduce their impact.
Taylor, do you mind, Tracy? I had a quick question. I'm gonna just be completely direct, and energy is my background. So even though we do work in this space, it's not my expertise at all in terms of sustainable fashion practices. Something that I forgot to mention is that at LACI, we're actually exploring a more formal initiative around sustainable or sustainability in textiles. So I wouldn't be surprised if Karri or Taylor, you were able to provide input and feedback there, because that's starting to take off, which we're looking forward to. But in relation to that, there hasn't been, from my understanding, that much from the public sector in terms of, putting mandates in place to encourage all of these practices that you're going over. And often what we see is that perhaps the companies aren't as aggressive with their practices or as open, because oftentimes it means it costs more money, perhaps not even the product itself or the material, but just switching over to something new. So I'm curious, from your perspective, what you found to be the reason that they were willing to speak to Hurd Co. Like, where is that pressure coming from, or how are they seeing that within their overall business model? Like, why is that a good thing for them?
Definitely. So there are a couple different things that come to mind. One, yes, absolutely. There are not any regulations in this country for requiring brands to make more sustainable choices, but there are regulations overseas. So Europe has done an amazing job of requiring companies to start making that shift. And a lot of brands have at least some of their supply chain in Europe. So that has helped push them, like nudge them in the right direction for some things. And then it becomes a competition, right? Like everyone, they're super competitive. So, once like one brand makes a big sustainability commitment, then other brands feel pressured to also make a sustainability commitment. So there is this sort of general movement in the industry towards that. Now, I will say that now that these brands have made very ambitious sustainability commitments, like H&M has made a really lot. H&M and Zara, who normally you think they're fast fashion companies, they have made very ambitious and impressive sustainability commitments that will not be possible to meet unless they start using materials like we produce. They can't meet those goals unless they shift the type of raw materials they're using. So that's why they've been so open to speaking with us, is because they are now actively looking for ways to reach those goals that they've been really loud about. And I mean that in a really good, positive way. I'm so glad they've been loud about it. And that's how it has to happen, is have these industry giants lead the charge. I will also say that, of course, there's competition. It is, all business is a competition in some sense, but people who are working in sustainability minded brands and people who are in the sustainability departments, it's a very small world, actually. Everyone knows each other because the people hop around between brands. We all go to the same sustainability, like textile sustainability conferences every year. Like everybody knows each other. And there is a general sense among that group of people that a rising tide raises all boats. So, even though I'm just going to throw two brands out there, like Patagonia and Levi's are both, the big names, they're willing to work together to support an innovation that will improve both of their supply chains. I hope that answers your question. Does that answer the question?
It did. Thank you.
Great.
Yeah.
I would like to.
I was just going to say immediately, I'm familiar with those companies, and because they have been really loud about all the great work that they're doing. So it's great to see. Thanks.
I do want to say, regarding like policy and municipal or state or federal policy, however that works out, there's history and a tendency of good intentions getting implemented in ways that might make sense for a big multinational company, but that straight up kind of screw over small companies. And so I feel that more of like incentives and programs versus mandates and policies, because this last year, the whole independent contractor law of California was made for the Lyft and Ubers of the world. But that straight up perfect example ended up screwing with the businesses of so many like small creatives who were like film or music or production based, where they're like, I'm a contractor because I'm working on this production. It makes no sense for me to be an employee. And so like, that's just one example of like, and several of my friends in that industry were just like, they had it completely upended their entire business. So I am very, reluctant to advocate for mandates and policy because of that reason, but I feel incentives and programs would be a way that would work with the smaller businesses of the world, because as a small business, and I know Taylor, you know, as you guys have grown, like California is so tied up in the red tape, and it is a huge barrier for smaller companies to navigate these systems. And I'm not saying that's an excuse, and there should absolutely be regulations, but I just want to, because that talk's coming up a lot more. And so it just needs to be well thought out regulations that aren't made for the big companies that end up screwing the small companies, because unfortunately that happens a lot when regulations come into play. So I just want to add that on that note. And Taylor, I was going to say with, because in my mind, like your sales would be like, oh, go find the thread manufacturers. But you're going straight to the brands to have them demand their thread manufacturers make that change, which means then that you have to work with a brand that's at least X large to have the capability to go to their supply chain and say that, because so often these smaller businesses, they don't have the power to demand that in their supply chain, and they're often kind of just stuck with searching with what's available within the supply chain. And you know, so I know obviously that has to start somewhere, and it starts with the big bucks who can have that power to tell their manufacturers to source these new things. So I think that's really cool that you went that way, because in my sales mind, I would have went like to the, you know, North Carolina, and like or the Southwest has a lot of like actual fabric and thread and yarn manufacturers and stuff, and going there, but you're going to the people who demand it of them. So I think that's a smart way to do that. And yes is the answer to the industry is absolutely ready for that, because like cotton is so great. Organic cotton like is great, but that takes water. The rayon, the lyocell is so popular because it's like silk, but it's not silk, but it's like contributes to deforestation. And so and the fact that you're doing this off of a waste that's already a product being produced, so you're not producing extra, is a truly circular and regenerative. So, you know, I, like you say sustainable, but you know, you're more in the regenerative, like sustainable, regenerative, you know, so I think that's great. And I thought that was really smart of you to kind of take that business approach.
Thanks, I
with
appreciate that.
Yeah,
No,
and
we
then
had
to
to
just,
go to the,
oh, go ahead.
no, you're right. We did. We had to go to the big guys, because
Mhm.
it's so hard to get, I mean, get that volume through with smaller amounts, because a lot of companies don't have capacities small enough. You know, they need
Mhm.
large orders to make it worth it for them.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I would just say back to the original question about the market from the consumer end. So my pricing strategy is absolutely to be like in the 50-ish range, definitely under 100-ish range, because I want to be a brand that's not like, oh, they're sustainable, but it costs, you know, $200, $300. Unfortunately, the products really do cost that much, but fast fashion has driven expectations down so far that I start from the fact of like, okay, I want to be at like our dye service at $30, or some services at like maybe $50 or $60. So we're affordable and we're accessible, and they can choose between these. So we become like a modest fashion choice versus, you know, the contemporary realm, when really like fashion does cost $100 and $200. It's the race to the bottom that sets this arbitrarily low price that now we all expect it to cost. Like my students think $25 is an expensive shirt, you know, and it's like, okay, well, good luck competing. Like if you're going to be a small business trying to offer a $25 shirt, you're going to have a big challenge to do that. And so just trying to get, you know, this mindset of like, yeah, you want to be competitive, but like these are artificially low prices that have been set for a specific reason to outprice everyone else. But, you know, not absolutely everybody is into buying the too good to be true prices. Like I've literally read fashion bloggers be like, Shine, Fashion Nova, is it too good to be true? I'm like, it is too good to be true. If you have to ask the question, it is too good to be true. Someone is getting the SHIT end of the stick on that. And it's always the garment workers at the bottom. And, you know, and like no pair of jeans should cost $10. But they do now. And so that's the world that we're working in, you know, and we have to be competitive because like consumers, they'll pay like just a teeny bit more to be sustainable, but they're not going to pay a lot more to be sustainable. And so one way I am approaching my marketing plan is through, you know, we fix fit issues, like, you know, these clothes don't fit well to begin with. We can fix that. We can, you know, we can solve these problems, and we happen to be sustainable is like our marketing message, even though from the back end, the sustainable and the circularity was like the only reason to exist. So like the messaging in that is, from the B2C perspective is super important. Like it can't be like, you can't guilt people into, Gen Z I think can be guilted a little bit because they're all about transparency. You guys accept the guilt a little bit, but like.
Yes, millennials, I don't know, but Gen Z,
Yeah, millennials, we talk the talk, but Gen Z walks the walk. So that's a big reason that the industry is so ready for it, is because there is an actual customer push, you know, where people are saying, yeah, we will pay a little bit more for sustainability, but we don't want to buy this stuff that's super, super cheap. So yeah, definitely.
I see Tosin has her hand up there. Hi, Tosin.
Hi everyone, great conversation so far. I'm glad to be here with you all. First, I wanted to say, I think Pamela has a question in the chat for Taylor, yeah. And then, okay, so my question is actually for Karri. I am just curious about your customer demographics, like how many, just now you mentioned Gen Z, like how many younger folks have you, or should I say like, what's the percentage of like the older millennials to like younger Gen Z who are really passionate about sustainability?
It's not easy to answer because when my transaction rings, I don't ask for their age. I just fulfill the order. But what I will say is of our key demographics, people with fit issues, like I'm 6'2" and barely anything fits me. Shopping is a nightmare. I hate it. And so people with fit issues, petites, talls, plus size, etc. That's my market. The people who do care about sustainability is absolutely my market. And then the other market we target is the people who like truly just, you know, they value that super unique look. They like put, you know, they're the best dressed in the room, you know, they always have like the coolest look and the coolest clothes because they want that individuality, and we can provide that individuality. So it's hard to know exactly what age they are because, you know, I just fulfill their order without giving them a survey. But I believe, honestly, I think more of like 30, 40, 50-year-olds really would be more of my customer. Because as much as like Gen Z does care, Well, I need to get I have to grow my marketing strategy to really like be in front of the number of people that I need to be in front of. But
Gen
yeah,
X is a very important generation, Gen X.
I'm the very last year of Gen X, and so I know I'm like social media like is not my strong suit, and so I finally recognized that I need a marketing team. If it's up to me, I'm going nowhere. Yeah, if anyone's looking for marketing positions, I can give you a position in some marketing. But yeah, did that answer your question, Tosin? I don't know if I completely.
Yes, it did. Thank you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then maybe I'll just jump in and answer Pamela's question from the chat. So she was asking if we'd ever sell the fabrics direct to consumer. The answer is maybe down the line. Right now, the problem is there's still a big gap between what we produce and what consumers would use. Like if I were to sell you my product, you'd get a jar full of pulp, which can't really do much with unless you have an extrusion. Like I mean, I think it's very cool. I love looking at my jars of pulp, but I don't think most like home sewists would get much out of it. But yes, I mean, down the line, I'm also a sewist. I sew a lot of clothes, as I mentioned, a fabric nerd. So I would love to be able to offer some fabric direct to consumer, but right now it's just not a reality for what we produce, but maybe down the line.
All right, so you go for it.
So I am also on the LACI team. I am also on the energy team, but I do a lot of market research for LACI as it relates to all of the priorities that we focus on. And so it's interesting, and it's great to have you two here today because you guys touch on so many different things as it relates to zero waste and waste diversion and new generation materials for textiles and things like that, as well as like the need to be able to understand supply chains, especially with the Hurd Co. So I just wanted to, we were talking about regulations and incentives and things like that. And so I wanted to kind of, I guess, touch base with you guys on aftermarkets and opportunities where like large waste producers are actually regulated to create digital tracking or supply chain tracking so that you can get a clean pulp supply of specific paper pulp, or you can get a clean supply of just specific fabric cuttings so that you have those materials instead of you having to, find very localized small producers. You have an aftermarket that you can go to create the product that then you sell back so that you have a larger supply chain. So I wanted to kind of get your ideas of like, how you feel about that, and then two, how do you envision that working in a broader space? Because I know it is a very large task to get something like that going.
Yeah, I can answer this, or Karri, do you want to answer? Go first, go ahead.
Thanks, sure. So in regards to Lauren, what you're saying, so like a material bank, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and last I checked in October, I know LACI has a pilot project to hopefully come up with that. I haven't heard any updates on that, but I do think that is super helpful and necessary. I know specifically they were going to focus on the pre-consumers, so more like the fabrics and the unused fabrics and scraps there. And I think that's great. And the city, like if you're in the know, you know that you can go to like rag finders and some few places downtown to find like great dead stock fabrics, but that's one of the few places. And then otherwise you just kind of have your little ways and means of finding it. But I think there needs to be a greater collection across the industry of these fabrics, of these scraps. And then the post-consumer clothing is more complicated though, because clothing, it gets into every type of material, and also every type of condition. And there's one thing I sort of fear, but I hope can be tackled is there's definitely a hierarchy that needs to be followed for what gets resold, what gets upcycled, redesigned, and what gets recycled. Because people kind of are thinking like, oh, recycling, that's the solution. But only the zero value textiles should be recycled only. And even if it's zero value, it still needs to be sorted. It still needs to be disassembled and shredded and all the buttons taken off and the grommets taken off, et cetera. But there's so much inherent value in so many clothes that like it can be weeded out and resold or repaired and remerchandised and made to just look good again, resold, or like what we do, just completely redesign it into something else. Because that's any material or clothing that already exists has used its carbon output. So it's like you're accessing a bank of carbon instead of, because Taylor, like I'm, you know, obviously there's a carbon output and an energy output in converting your pulp to fabric, but the fact that it comes from like a waste product already kind of cancels out a lot of that. But recycling, for as amazing as it is, it's still a huge carbon out emitter. It still takes a huge amount of energy to recycle that fabric. And like there, you know, there's some scenarios of like, well, we're just putting all this fabric in here, but it's like a lot of that clothes actually had value and it should not be recycled yet. And so that's kind of what I would advocate for as far as the material bank. There needs to be a big focus on the level and accuracy of sorting, and then of course disassembly. And disassembly is a huge problem to tackle.
Yeah. I know we're like at time, but I will say that, I mean, obviously the input that I work with is very different from the input that Karri works with. I work with agricultural waste. So, and that is sort of the approach that we do take. We do work directly with producers at processing plants who are processing agriculture into whatever their end product will be. So, you know, sometimes depending on the crop, they're processed different ways. The crop that we work with is it's cut down in the field and then it's sent to a processing plant to have all the like the de-seeding happen and all of that stuff. So we work directly with that facility specifically. They're a massive facility. They have plenty of feedstock to keep us happy and well fed for the first few years of what we're doing. So that, you know, we do sort of do that, but in a roundabout way. I mean, obviously it is just one type of crop that we're working with right now. When we get to a broader range of crops, it would be great to have a centralized location we could go to and be like, cool, we'll take 20 tons of corn and you will take 10 tons of hemp, and you know, that would be
crops or aloe waste or
exactly. Yeah, so that would be hugely helpful, because that's going to be a big part of my job in the next couple of years, is like going and trying to find the waste and get it to where it needs to go.
Yeah, so there's been every time I do research, I'm always like aftermarkets, and so I also sew. So my favorite place in Joann's, for whoever said Joann's, is the remnant section. Yeah. And making anything out of a remnant that nobody wanted, for me, feels really cool. And then I also like going to thrift stores and using materials to cut stuff up, but it's mostly just a hobby. So yeah, so thank you guys for your answers for that question.
Remnant bins at all fabric shops are the absolute best. There's a fabric shop in Venice called Fabric Planet that you can get like so much fabric for like dollars, just like few dollars.
They're 10 minutes away, so yeah. I know where
come on over. Yeah.
So we're at our designated time. I mean, I want to respect everyone's time here. I mean, I'm sure we can keep on talking. I wanted to make sure if there's anyone has a last question for the group, or any comments from LACI or questions. I wanted to, Tracy, of course. I'll let Tracy have the last word or last question. And I just wanted to thank you all. This is such immensely fascinating. I feel like this is just scratching the surface of many more conversations. You know, we didn't even get to really talk about the my kid just fell. I'll stop there. Let Tracy take it away. Go ahead. Oh man, hope they're okay.
Thank you, Nat. Well, I just want to say this is a wonderful conversation, and I feel like Nat just mentioned, we are just scratching the surface. There are so many things we can talk about. Well, my last question is, since this is a collaboration among the industry and LACI and Educational Institute, could you give what's the advice would you give to our seasoned students if they are interested in fashion and maybe if they would like to pursue a sustainable fashion career in the future? Could you give our students some advice? Thank you.
I'd be happy to give some advice. So I think sustainability is no longer a side note or a footnote. I think it is the core of the industry going forward. I think any new successful company will have that at their core. But what advice I could give, like I know so many fashion designers are taught how to drape, how to pattern make, you make such beautiful things. But then at the end of the day, who is going to buy it? And at what price are you selling it at? So I know a lot of designers are, you're into couture and you want to be like the high-end celebrity red carpet designer. And I totally get that. But you got to think beyond that very slim market into who else can wear this? And think about your price point from the beginning. And then finally, it's amazing and crucial to know the hand pattern making skills, but you really need to invest in knowing like the digital pattern making and the digital marking and grading and the digital cutting and such, because that's where the jobs are. So the hand pattern making is amazing, and that's such a cool, like core craft. It's a craft, and then you just need to translate that to the digital side. Do you guys teach digital pattern making? Okay, perfect.
Yes, we do. We have been teaching students using a digital software to do the pattern making. Yeah.
Good. Keep it up.
We will.
Well, I'll say my bit of advice, my 2 cents, is just ask questions. Ask questions and use your position as a student to your advantage. You guys, being a student opens so many doors. People love talking to students. You could email anyone out of the blue. That's how I got through grad school. That was really the basis of the Hurd Co, was me cold emailing people at these companies and saying, hi, I'm a grad student. I'm interested in what you do. Could we hop on just like a quick call? This is what I'm working on. I'd love to just hear your thoughts. And I think probably like 9 out of 10 of the people that I emailed would respond to me and set up a phone call with me. So just use that. You are in such an amazing position right now as a student to have access to those people and have those conversations. And right now during the pandemic, even more so, because people are sitting in front of their computer all day anyway. You can have a Zoom call. It's just as good as meeting in person because everyone's doing Zoom calls now anyway. So ask questions. Think just any question you might have that you think somebody at a company that you're interested in maybe working at after school, email them, say, you just ask questions. And that's how I got my job at an apparel brand. And I will say, since we're speaking to students, the woman that I worked for at that apparel brand now works for me. I ended up hiring her at the Hurd Co. So you never know what question, like where questions will lead you. So ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask.
Thank you. Thank you. These are very, very valuable advice to our students. Thank you very much. Nat, I will turn it over to you to wrap up the conversation.
So I hope you hear any construction in the other room over there. Apologies. Thank you again so much for coming. We're going to have you come back and just continue the conversation and the collaboration. And again, I see so many intersections, and we really thank LACI for supporting us and for really just helping us bring Taylor and Karri here and just helping us think about the intersection of tech and clean tech and zero waste and energy and fashion. I think this is what's so exciting and so important. So we really are honored to have you here and looking forward to talking more. All right, everybody. This is kind of the weird part of
Thank
Zoom when
you.
you say goodbye and then it's
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for
Have a
coming.
good evening.
Have a great day. See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.